Welcome to Sermon Brainwave with me, Matt Skinner.
And me, Karoline Lewis.
And me, Rolf Jacobson.
This podcast is for the 22nd Sunday after Pentecost, which falls on November 9th, 2025. The first reading in the thematic series is Job 19, 23 through 27a. The first reading in the semi-continuous series is Haggai 1, 15b through 2:9. Let's talk about Psalm 17, 1 through 9. Our second reading is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 1 through 5 and 13 through 17. And in Luke chapter 20, verses 27 through 38. We are now in Jerusalem. We get 2 weeks in Jerusalem before our Reign of Christ Sunday is upon us.
And to switch to
And we
Matthew.
we just get one passage of Jesus's debates, verbal skirmishes in the temple with various religious leaders. Today it's the Sadducees, those who say there is no resurrection, according to Luke 20, 27. So this is, a lot of people know this passage exists because we don't quite know what to do with it. They come and they're like, hey, Jesus, this woman was married, her husband died, his brother had to marry her, he died, his brother had to marry, whose wife will she be in the resurrection? Which is just a great way to phrase the question, isn't it? Whose wife will she be? To whom will she belong in the resurrection? So that should tip us off right here. This is not a very romantic view of marriage, perhaps, that we're working with in the first place. It's a test, right? They're trying to reduce the notion of resurrection to an absurdity and say, you really believe resurrection? Well, doesn't this make it sound, unreasonable or weird or whatever?
This proves, and this is how I'm opening my sermon in this day, is this proves there is such a thing as a stupid question. You may have been taught by your high school teacher that there's no such thing as a stupid question. She was wrong. This is a stupid question.
What makes it stupid?
Well, first of all, because
whose wife she will be? Whose woman? Whose wife will the woman be? Is that the question you're talking about?
First of all, because it's not a question, it's like you said, it's a trap, an absurd trap. So Moses wrote, blah, blah, blah. There were 7 brothers. The first married a woman and died childless. Then the second, and then the third, right? And then all 7. I mean, it's
absurd.
I remember saying to my dad, who is a pastor, when I was like in junior high, somebody had said, well, if God can do anything, can God make a rock that's so heavy God can't lift it? I remember saying, when I was like 12, I was bothered by that. And I brought home, Dad said, ask a stupid question, get a stupid answer. And so, go ahead. You might disagree.
No, I think you're right. Although Jesus might give them a stupid answer.
Right. Well,
in this passage, when he talks about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But go ahead.
No, go ahead. That's what I'm going with is, I think in context of the Passion narratives, what's interesting is that you get each group of first century Jews coming up and testing him. You get Pharisees, you get, is it a zealot or an Essene? I can't remember, somebody else.
You get some scribe. You don't get every group, just to be clear. A variety, different groups do come to him, but it's not like all of Judaism is represented.
Thank you.
To be clear. Yeah.
But to me, that's, I think, actually narratively the important thing, that Jesus is being tested in the temple during Passion Week. And to pull one of them out is just difficult.
Yeah, you need all 3 years together to get a sense of all of them, which, again, that's a lot of stuff for people to hold in their heads for 3 years. But you make a good point. Sadducees, these are not just people who say there are no resurrection. These are the elite families of Jerusalem. These are priestly families. These are people who run the place that Jesus is sitting in or standing in, talking and teaching. So there's a bit of a turf war implied here. They want to embarrass this newcomer.
Oh, that's nice.
There'll be a price to be paid for embarrassing them. I think they're going to turn on him. So just to kind of get a sense that this is more than casual conversation, there seems to be a crowd around him as well. And I said the answer, it's not clear if the answer is really how serious the answer is, or if Jesus is giving a dumb answer. Dumb in a sense of mocking the question. It's 2 parts, right? It's on the first hand, you don't understand marriage isn't apply to the resurrected life,
Yeah.
which disturbs a lot of people. We should note that when this is read or talked about. And the
Well, and
second
how
thing,
people will think about it too.
some
Well,
people can't wait to be reunited with their spouse who they've been living without for decades.
yes.
And
Yeah. I mean, it is an absurd sort of situation, but at the same time, I think there really is a pastoral
Oh, I totally
element
agree.
in this, in that people do wonder that with like, and if they remarry, if a spouse has died and remarry, like who am I going to be with in the afterlife? Yeah, they really do wonder that.
Agreed. I actually think.
Sorry, I interrupted. You had a second one too.
I'm holding it. I'm waiting I'm building suspense.
Oh,
I
wow.
think
Can't wait.
we also know about the Sadducees. They only acknowledge the Torah, the first 5 books. They don't not. The Pharisees, and Jesus is apparently, and Paul are apparently Pharisees. Or Paul says, I was a Pharisee. Jesus, based on everything we can compare, is more like the Pharisees than any other group of Judaism, first century. At least that's what I was taught. The Sadducees. So part of it, when it's interesting, when Jesus does go to respond to them by focusing on Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he's focusing on the Torah. So he's kind of playing with their rule book, which I think is really interesting. But it's a joke. I think it's really funny. And of course, jokes don't work cross-culturally usually. You know, you have to be in a culture to get the joke. And so when he says, listen, in the story about the bush, where he speaks of the Lord as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, I think that Jesus' audience probably laughed because, like, oh, that's a good one, you know?
It's a playfulness, right? This is not a serious proof, right, from Scripture.
Correct.
It's, hey, if you even looked in Torah, you could find evidence that, you know, people are still alive after death. And there probably is a little snickering. And no one probably changes their mind as a result of this conversation.
No.
And part of what's interesting about the conversation so far is, in some ways, I think it really illustrates some of what Ken Dramone in her commentary points out, which I think is very insightful, right? That we can argue about this, and we can spend a lot about proof of resurrection. We can talk about first century interpretive practices. We can talk about Sadducees, but she takes her commentary in a very interesting place, where she says, what if this passage is talking about how do you live
Without the fear of
without fear of death?
Yeah.
So I loved how she took all of my kind of scholarly questions and insights and basically said, like, keep these away from the pulpit today. There's another place for those, but get at this deeper question of,
What does it mean to know that promise?
right, and what does it mean to not calculate every decision
And
based on...
Yeah, and not lay out the resurrection in our kind of specifications or expectations, but our rules were, but just what does it mean to, because that's really what in Jesus' non-answer he's pointing to, is the promise of the resurrection. And so whether you figure out, okay, whose wife this woman is, or the comments about Moses, at the end of the day, that's not the point. The point is the promise. And I think I really appreciated that about Ken Dramone's commentary as well. And I do think that would be a meaningful sermon for people, you know, and just to point out the ways in which we articulate our expectations for the afterlife. And we might not voice them, but we have them. And just say, well, what if you just sat in the promise alone? Which then takes me to, if you're ready, Job.
Yep.
Oh, you're segueing.
I'm segueing.
I saw that coming. That was really
segueing.
nicely done.
Only because of one verse, and that is, well, we talked about this before we got started. Translated, I know that my vindicator lives. However...
Do you want me to go on my rant now or after you make your point?
I want to sing too.
Okay, go ahead.
So, I know that my Redeemer lives. A very, very, very much a favorite hymn of many people, sung on Easter. In fact, I have a friend for whom, if I know that my Redeemer lives is not sung, then Jesus hasn't been raised from the dead. So she waits until whatever Sunday of Easter, I know that my Redeemer lives. I want to point out that this is the third podcast in a row that I've sung something. I'm going to go for it next week, but I'm not quite sure.
What's your most in a row?
This might be it. This might be it right here. But I know that my Redeemer lives. And except, now you can go on your rant, because it's, I know that my Vindicator lives, which is too many syllables for the tune.
Yes, it is.
And it's not a good translation. And why is that?
Yes, it's the NRS view has changed the traditional.
View. Oh, I haven't heard that's called that.
That's what I like to call it because it's VUE at the end. NRS view. I can't
like
stand
NRS
this
view.
new translation. I have no idea why they did this, but so here's the line: "For I know that and then it's the Hebrew word goel lives. So a goel was someone in Israel's kinship-based society who owed family obligation to a relative in need. And depending on what that need was, who the goel was in your family system was different. You guys have heard me talk about this before over the many years we've done this. The reason you get redeemer is one of the things is they had to pay off a debt. And so at the time of the translation of King James and so on, to pay off somebody else's debt was called to redeem. And so they knew that. And so that's why it's traditionally translated as redeemer. Fine. Because you can't say every time you come across a word, I know that my relative who fulfills family obligation to me when I'm in need. Right?
That really does not fit the tune.
It does not fit the do, right? Yeah. That's too many syllables.
Yep.
I get it. But vindicator is nowhere, it's not anywhere closer to that. And it's certainly not to what Job means here. Okay, end of rant.
That's a good one. That was a good rant, though. But it's not just that, it's not only that verse, but the way in which these words are paired with that hope of the resurrection, words written down or that they were inscribed in a book. Those also are images, too, of how people imagine resurrection. I mean, Job is articulating, whom shall I see on my side? I mean, those are you're going to say something.
I was going to ask you a question.
Oh, yeah, what?
Well,
you're going to ask me what my favorite Easter hymn is?
No.
Oh, okay.
I was going to ask you, do you even try to do anything with this text? I mean, I look at the gospel text, this controversy story with the Sadducees that is about this weird biblical interpretation pulled out of context. So you're going, oh, good. What's the Old Testament got for me today? And then you apparently have something that's so out of context from one of Job's last speeches when he and his friends are arguing. And do you just preach the whole book of Job here this particular week? Because this is even more out of context than Luke. What do you guys think?
You're both staring at me.
I'm asking you both.
If I were preaching this Sunday, and I am, but not on this text, but I would consider weaving together a little Luke 20, a little Job 19, a little Psalm 17. Mm-hmm. If the topic's going to be resurrection, because then I would try to talk about at the heart of resurrection is not a promise of more life. It's a promise of the presence of God. Mm-hmm. I would try to reframe that. You know what I mean? And don't think about it quantitatively as much as you're thinking about it. Where is God? Because you've got Jesus ending his conversation with the Sadducees. To him, to God, all of them are alive. What does it mean to be alive to God in life or in death? Mm-hmm. You've got Job saying, in my flesh I shall see God. And that's probably a difficult translation too. I get all that in verse 26. And then you've got language in Psalm 17 about being guarded as the apple of God's eye.
Shadow in the wings.
You've got language of intimacy in all three of these, or language of being known, maybe it's better to say. And to me, that's a more interesting way to talk about resurrection than is where will I get to live? Who will I get to see? To whom will I be married? Will Grandpa still have Alzheimer's or will he be his old self again? How old will my kids be? I mean, all those kinds of questions that we think about and are part of how we grieve and are fun thought experiments sometimes. But at the end of the day, it's about presence and being caught up in the presence of God corporately. And I want to draw people into that sense of comfort and mystery. So maybe these texts I would not be interpreting in ways that would get me an A in a seminary Bible class might still nevertheless help me do that as a preacher. Keep going. I've cut you off.
But I was thinking, when you said that, I was thinking of how well verse 7 of the Psalm would encapsulate that. Wondrously show your steadfast love. Isn't that what resurrection is? Is God showing God's steadfast love, God's promise of steadfast love.
And desire to be with us.
And
as opposed to God saying, I can't wait for the 70 years to be up because Matt's just insufferable.
I have a question for Rolf.
Yeah.
Is the verb or is the word in Psalm 17 verse 2 which is translated from you, since you did the vindication rant. Is it the same word? Or is it a different word? From you, let my vindication come.
Yeah.
Probably tzedakah, isn't it?
No, it's
not.
Golel again?
It's not goel, because goel doesn't mean vindicate.
Oh, yeah, right.
So
but this is actually vindication?
Yes, this is.
Oh.
So
I was just wondering if there was like a
correct.
translation issue there.
This is actually proper. This is actually proper vindication.
Got it. Okay.
So it's actually the word mishpat. Is that what you said, Matt? No, you said tzedakah.
No, I said tzedakah.
So when we had Habakkuk, it can mean justice.
Oh.
So here's what I love about Psalm 17, and it's not the apple of the eye thing. It's verses 1 and 2. Hear a just cause, O Lord, attend to my cry. Give ear to my prayer from lips that are free of deceit. From you let my justice come. Let your eyes see. This is somebody who has been falsely accused. This is what I actually would, if I were preaching this particular Sunday, and I'm not scheduled to preach anywhere, is I wrote an article for Word and World, I think it was a year ago or so, called There's a Psalm for That. And here's a psalm for somebody who's been falsely accused. And if you've ever known anybody who's been falsely accused, if you've ever been falsely accused, especially if the stakes are high. I know I have a friend who was falsely accused and lost his job and his career because of it. I have a different friend who was falsely accused, and enough people knew it was false, but he was somebody in our field that was a theologian, and he had a really rocking career preaching and teaching at conferences. He was not on faculty anywhere, and he was falsely accused by somebody who he had been through court with, and the courts had sided fully with him. It didn't matter. He got dropped and never got his career back. I know people that who've gone through very difficult divorces and had false claims made by ex-spouses, which could cost them their kids. So people experience false accusations all the time, and I guarantee you there's people in your congregation that have been falsely accused. And for them to know there's a prayer for them, and God does not take, you might not win in this world in those false accusations. The people who've lost kids, jobs, careers, other things, and God cares. I just think that's, to me, a very important thing. That's where I'd go.
Thanks for that.
Thank you for that. Some people have accused Haggai
of being what?
Of being an unessential biblical book. That's probably a false accusation.
An unessential biblical book.
Here's Haggai. Every 3 years, Haggai gets his Sunday in the sun, and this is it.
Oh.
I got to say, though, the beginning of this text sounds like it's out of a Monty Python sketch. On the 24th day of the month, in the 6th month, in the 2nd year of King Darius, in the 7th month, on the 21st day of the month.
I just like saying
anyway.
Zerubbabel.
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Jehozadak?
It's usually pronounced Zerubbabel.
What?
It's usually pronounced Zerubbabel.
Zerubbabel?
Yeah.
Zerubbabel.
In fact, there was
Didn't
once...
I pronounce it that way?
Zerubbabel.
Zerubbabel?
I'm looking this up just for fun.
Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel, like
let's
dirigible?
It's probably...
You say dirigible?
Dirigible.
You say dirigible?
Yeah.
That's a word we've never said on Sermon Brainwave before,
Dirigible.
I'm sure. All right.
Everybody know what a dirigible is?
It's...
I don't want to show off.
It's
limp.
It's either Zerubbabel or Zerubbabel. So here's the thing about the book of Haggai. It's not one of your top 10 biblical books.
That's true.
If we were going to do a snake draft where we each back and forth get to pick a favorite book, and then we're going to put them up and see who votes for us,
Who gets to vote first?
Well, that's the thing is, if you went first, then I would go third.
I would choose John, and Karoline would be incensed.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to get a long way before we get to Haggai.
All right.
But
Will we ever get to Haggai?
The interesting thing about, well, probably not, but the interesting thing about the book of Haggai is it's very precisely dated. I can't remember. Did they put it in the commentaries at like 520? 516?
Yes.
Yeah, 2020.
Yeah, Will Gaffney's commentary has got the October 17th, 520.
Yeah. So, hey, I forgot the Assyrians and the Babylonians last week, which was which at first, but I knew 520. Persian period, by the way. The interesting thing is that there seems to be they haven't rebuilt the temple. They laid the foundations, about 535 or so, but they haven't finished it. And the urgency, Haggai is really He probably takes that name, which means my festivals, meaning, right, Pentecost, Passover, and booths. And he probably takes that as part of the prophetic message. Hey, my festivals is here. He's going to be talking about why aren't we rebuilding the temple so we can have God's festivals, that kind of thing. I do think it could be an interesting thing just to talk about why is it that it is urgent to God that we have places of worship where God can meet us, where God's word can form us, where we can be community.
You said it's urgent to God that be the case?
Yeah. That's what Haggai thinks it is. And it's sort of like in the same thing we did with Luke. It's a point of departure where Kendra says, here's a good point of departure from this text. People don't want to lecture on who the Sadducees are. People don't want to lecture on what was going on, but the urgency of worship. There you go.
Isn't part of the context here also that people are realizing the new temple is going to be pretty sad looking? Isn't this partly like people are going to recognize that the temple post-exile is not going to be as magnificent as the previous one? And is that part of Haggai's
I've never thought of it that way. I'd have to think more about it. The latter splendor of this house shall be greater than the former.
Yeah, but is he lying? Is he saying, I know it doesn't look great, but we're going to have some great times here?
What I would wonder the extent of which that all the people that are trying to preserve a past that never existed is have they projected a grandeur on Solomon's temple that actually it wasn't as magnificent as we want to think. But yes, it is true that when they laid the foundation, that the people that remembered the old one wept because this one was such a sorry lot. Yes, that's part of the biblical story.
I didn't know if that Haggai was picking up on that or not.
It's a good question.
You could sing Handel's Messiah here from verse 7, Karoline, if you want.
Of Haggai?
Yeah, I'll shake the nations, shake the heavens and the earth, the sea and the dry land.
Oh.
Verses 6 and 7.
I don't know that part of
From
Handel's Messiah.
I forgot
I don't
that.
sing, so you're not going to get it from me.
I already sang today, so I'm still now thinking.
You're still on 3.
I'm working on
next week already.
So
yeah.
I'm not.
I know no songs related.
I don't sing 2 songs,
2 Thessalonians,
2 hymns in one podcast. I
What
only
about
do
Thessalonians?
Well, welcome to the lawless one, literally the man of lawlessness, who is a character that shows up only in 2 Thessalonians. Don't equate him with the Antichrist who's not in the book of Revelation. This is where we get a bit of the eschatology of the book here. There's this concern of Christ's return having already happened, or the day of the Lord having already arrived, and how is that affecting the way people live? If anything, it's a nice warning about the way in which eschatology is deeply woven into our Christian commitments, and it gets us into a lot of trouble from time to time.
Is there a way that then this text can be put in conversation with a sermon on resurrection? Or is that,
that sounds like a question to which you already know the answer. What are you thinking?
I think so.
Oh, go ahead.
Right? Just in terms of how the conflation of eschatology and resurrection, and
now we're getting somewhere. Say more.
Right? In terms of people's expectations of resurrection and how they talk about resurrection and eschatology, even though they might not know they're talking about eschatology. But I think just inviting people into that space of what is resurrection? What do we expect about the last times or the second coming? Are they the same? Are they different? Not to get all millennialist, post, pre, whatever.
Yeah, okay, draw a
dispensationalism.
diagram. Yeah.
No, but you know what I mean. Like I think there is a lot of mixing of expectations of both, and not that that's bad. That's human beings trying to figure out what do the end times or what does life beyond this look like. But
what are you hoping for?
Yeah, what are you hoping for?
It's a framing question here. Some people appear to be hoping for destruction and retribution and judgment.
Well, the rapture was supposed to happen several weeks ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was a guy in South Africa
on TikTok
added his name to the list of other people who were wrong.
Mm-hmm. Guess what? You know what?
The text.
I'm glad we're still here, the 3 of us.
I was going to sing.
I'm glad because I can't wait to hear the singing in next week's podcast. I have something to look forward to. But there is a question of hope, right? For what do we hope? And I don't think 2 Thessalonians answers it as clearly as maybe the other texts do, but we hoped for the presence of God, the fullness of God in all, through all, and with all, be all, pick your preposition. And 2 Thessalonians doesn't exactly say that, but it does, I think, warn us against other kinds of speculation that are not helpful. Sermon Brainwave is a production of Working Preacher from Luther Seminary. Working Preacher has been a trusted source of inspiration, interpretation, and imagination for preachers worldwide since 2007. Find episodes, commentaries, and links at workingpreacher.org/brainwave, and subscribe to Working Preacher's monthly newsletter for Revised Common Lectionary Preachers by clicking on subscribe in the website footer. Please rate, review, and comment on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Thank you for joining us.